Good afternoon.
Hi there.
How
Back
are
to
you today, everybody in the universe out there that we can't see?
back to the WorkLife headquarters.
WorkLife headquarters. So, thanks for joining us today. Our topic that we wanted to share with you today is one of our favorites.
Master
Master
your
your
emotions
emotions before they master you.
before.
Because it's so easy to have them run you.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't do anything about it and you don't study what's going on for yourself, pretty soon, you're at the whim of whatever's going on around you.
So it's not an easy task. It's not a quick win. It's not let's just do it one time. And this is the kind of thing for all of us that takes not only practice and the ability to rehearse it, but also the ability to step back and say, sorry, I wasn't perfect.
And, I can hear the questions now, which is, so what? So what if they master me or I master them? And what's it got to do with anything? I've got to go get some work done. And of
Good
course,
point.
the answer to that is you can't get anything done today without talking to somebody else.
Well, the other thing is that, leadership, which, everybody is a leader in some way, shape, or form, requires that we acquire emotional mastery. And what, Daniel Goleman, who is the promoter back in the 90s of the concept of emotional mastery, said, and emotional intelligence, that 80% of your time as a leader should be spent on emotional mastery. The connections, the checking in with your employees, see how they're doing, and colleagues, with each other.
Well, I think, not only should it be, it's going to be whether you like it or not. The question is, how well are you going to be able to do it? Because everywhere you go, this something has to do with an interaction between somebody else, and somebody else isn't happy with this, and you got to go find out what's going on with that. If you're a leader and you just sit down and you look at your calendar, it's one of my favorite exercises. Look back over the last 2 weeks of your calendar and see how many of the things that you did were EQ related versus IQ related. How many of them were things that you just solved because you're so smart, and how many things were you had to sit down because there was some problem with an interaction or a relationship.
Well, the other piece that it addresses to me is that it's the ability as leadership to work on the business, not in the business.
Sure.
And if we're not working on the business, the issues will boil up so fast, such as retention, such as the way people communicate, such as how do people get the job done. The list could go on and on and on and on. So if the leader isn't on the business of that versus picking it apart by being in it, then there's really no direction.
Yeah, and clients that we have, I mean, I just had one today call me because he wants to have a conversation with somebody else that's one of the other leaders. And he's all spooled up about it because they don't understand, he doesn't understand, she doesn't understand why things are happening the way that they are. Well, they're happening because they're out of control. Their emotions are mastering them. But if you can step back and you can be in charge of your triggers, and you can see what it is that's causing you to go into all the confusion and the difficulty, then you have a chance. You can step back, you can talk together, you can work it out, you can figure out a plan. And it's so important for leaders to be able to do it, because when everybody else on the ship looks up at the bridge and they see the leaders arguing and freaking out, pretty soon everybody wants to jump ship anyway. Which, of course, is one of the major problems today is people don't stay and they leave, and they don't like the stress and they don't like the negativity. So how do we start creating places that are joyful and fun to work in and supportive and empathic, and I don't have to be so guarded? Ties us all back to psychological safety. I mean, it just goes on and on. The list goes on and on. In the end, it boils down to one thing, which is, do you know yourself? Can you manage yourself? Can you motivate yourself? If you can do that, then you can be empathic towards others, and you can ultimately interact and deal with relationships in a way that is positive rather than punitive.
Exactly. So we are Dave and Laura Butler of WorkLife Consulting, and we offer individual, team, organizational support with executive coaching, workshops, and programs that help people master and address the topics we're talking about. And we meet each week at this time online. We stream to Facebook, to YouTube, and LinkedIn. And so thank you for joining. If you're looking at the recording, thank you for looking, and thank you for being a part of our world. So I think one of the most important concepts that you just touched on is how important it is to embed empathy into the workplace culture. And this is, it's not easier said than done.
Well, there's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. I think people think empathy is I feel bad for you or something. Empathy is being able to recognize and respect the emotions and the perspectives of other people, not just see it through your own view and your own perspective, but understand and be able to, they say walk a mile in the other person's sneakers. I mean, well, you don't have to quite go that far, but you should be able to at least understand where they're coming from. Because if they're different than you, you're going to, disagree. Well, that's okay. What's important about it is the more we can look at things from different aspects and gather together other people's points of view, we see more of the big picture. We see more of the truth of what's going on, rather than being focused in on just one little section.
Absolutely. So it's the concept is what we're going to be covering and much more in our upcoming program, Emotional Mastery: The Key to Your Leadership Impact. And the link here is to the waitlist page. And another way that you could get to the information is by signing up on our website to be a part of our ongoing growing list. And we can fill you in on all the topics that we're covering and all the things that we're speaking about here, but also in our work. But I think one of the best ways to demonstrate what we're talking about here is looking at this is our favorite slide. I think this really describes the push-pull effect of IQ versus EQ. So the other thing other phrase is that IQ gets you the job, but EQ gets you the promotion.
Mm-hmm. It's one way to look at it. Certainly because EQ becomes more important the farther up you go in the hierarchy, so to speak, or even if you're one of the lucky ones to not being in a hierarchy anymore, you're still your time spent at work during the day as a leader becomes more and more EQ related than IQ related. And I like this slide so much because it's really, you have to choose, is it really balancing how the amount of IQ and EQ? Is it integration? The more EQ I have, the better I can utilize the IQ. I can be really smart, but if I'm not people smart or emotionally smart, it doesn't matter how head smart I am. I'm always going to be hitting a stone wall and things are not going to work out because I don't know what to do to get other people to join me.
Well, I love the other piece here is that sometimes we're going to be tipping the seesaw to IQ, and sometimes we need the EQ piece. But I think overall, the balance is what's important.
I'll give you an example. You have a group of engineers trying to solve a problem. They're all really smart. There's an awful lot of information there. But what happens when they disagree and they start getting into arguments and fights, and they carry resentment and don't really listen to each other? Well, you're not harnessing the value of the IQ. So the IQ is really dependent on the EQ to be truly utilized well.
Exactly. And then the other piece is this balance of the yin and the yang. Mm-hmm. So why don't you speak to this one?
Well, on the one side, same idea of the balance between the two, of the integration between the two. On the one side, you've got skills and knowledge, you've got advanced degrees, you've got talents and abilities that you've honed over the years. But you bring those in, if you can't interact with other people, with their styles, their motivations, their interests, their needs, the way that they approach it is different than you. Pretty soon, it's only half the circle. You can't really access other people. So recognizing the feelings, your own feelings, and managing those as well as those of others, it's absolutely critical to being able to make the most out of the IQ. IQ doesn't exist in a vacuum. The setting, the environment, the feelings, the sense of camaraderie, the dedication to the organization, the emotional commitment has everything to do with somebody showing up early and staying late, being willing to listen to other people's ideas. If it just devolves into a fight all the time, somebody's got to win or lose, the organization is not going to do very well.
So you've got the EQ side, which is your style, your motivation. You said earlier the empathy, and you just what happens is empathy is not feeling sorry for others. It starts with self-awareness. So there's a whole process to the framework, and of what we talk about in our course that is from the research that Daniel Goleman did. And so you start with the overall picture from your perspective, which then can sort of move out to your relationships. And when you see that, oh, there's a different perspective out there, then that's where empathy starts to, is generated from.
Yeah, being able to understand where somebody else is coming from is critical.
Right. And that becomes, when you have that empathy, that ability, that doesn't mean perfection. It just means that I have the ability to put myself in another person's shoes. Then I'm more motivated, which is another step of the framework, to enhance those relationships. And balanced with the other piece that's in our course is the integration of the Berkman method that, to me, is the manual for understanding self-awareness and for also integrating all of these EQ concepts. And the interesting thing, when we were talking about this earlier, when we said, why now? People have asked, why now? Why, any particular time? Well, why not, first of all? But second of all, if you look at, and this is put here on purpose, this EQ is one of the top 2 most important aspects of effective leadership. This is from Ohio State University. And this goes back to the 40s, when the research around social interactions, behavior with each other, is back in the mid-40s that Ohio State did research. And that evolved into colleagues of Daniel Goleman putting together the book, the research that we now know about regarding emotional intelligence. But why now? Because the needle hasn't changed that much. We haven't moved it that far. So the piece that I think is this one. It's how important it is to embed this in the workplace culture. So with our work coming up, with our program that we offer, we've had people say, this has given me a whole nother outlook on the way I work. It has transformed the way I work in my relationships. And I can't think of a better way to provide the testimonial about why now.
Right.
To answer that question.
Well, also why now is because the population is increasing so much and we're so interconnected with each other. It's very difficult to get anything done or to get any real progress going on a project if you can't interact with other people.
Right. So it just takes so much more time, and it ineffective. So again, we are Dave and Laura Butler of WorkLife Consulting, and we offer executive coaching for individuals, teams, and organizations. So thank you for joining us live, and thank you for listening to the replay. So we offer this weekly. Any closing statement around our topic for today, Dave?
I think what I would say is, let's stop wasting time. Let's go get empathic.
Yeah, it's let's do it, because it's just time. It's always time is now, but we've all come through some pretty crazy times, and the organizations and individuals within organizations are going through so much turmoil. You know, I just saw this morning in Columbus, where we are, Columbus, Ohio, there's this teacher strike. Now, what's that going to do to classes, and what's that going to do to childcare?
Right.
It's going right back.
Everything affects everything else. It's all
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah. So having empathy and understanding and emotional mastery is key to how you handle all of this disruption.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you for joining, and thank you for listening. There will be more to come, and we'll see you next time.